Hi, everyone. This is Beth Rogan. I'm the Associate Director of Marketing and Outreach at William James College, and I'm here to welcome you to our Masters of Arts in Applied Behavior Analysis online live session today. Thank you so much for joining us during your lunch hour. Really appreciate it. I know this is going to be a great program for you all. We have a great group joining us today. So I will be acting as your host. And what that really means is that I'm going to be providing a bit of an overview for you about William James College and managing the questions as they come in. And yeah, so we'll be doing that with a couple slides as we move forward. So for our next slide, please. This is the slide where I get to introduce my fellow colleagues on the presentation today. And Dr. Ronald Lee is really our star. He is the director of our Masters of Arts in Applied Behavior Analysis, our ABA program. And he has lots to talk about in terms of the field, working within ABA, the applications for that, and training. And I am Beth Rogan, as I mentioned before, and Mario Murga is the Director of Admissions. He will be providing you with some insight and a couple slides further in on our program on things to think about when applying to a graduate program, and then more specifically about William James College. Mario is also handling the tech end or the back end of the webinar today, so thank you, Mario. And we'll move on to our next slide. So this is a facade of William James College, kind of a picture of our building. It's a wonderful building. We are just a school of psychology and behavioral health. That's what we do. So we're able to really specialize in that area. But what I'd like to say about this is really it's the culture inside the building, the culture of who we are as a family, as Mario always likes to say, of students, faculty, and staff and administration at William James College. There's a lot happening here, and there's many opportunities for all of you to join in that culture and in that community. We are located right outside of Boston, about 15 minutes in non-rush hour to downtown. We are in Newton, Massachusetts, off of major highways and byways, where our building is located. So we'll go on to the next slide. And this is where I wanted to just present a bit of an overview so you have a sense of all that's happening here in William James College and all of the kind of offerings within various, with all the different departments. So the clinical department is where we offer a doctoral program in clinical PsyD. And then in counseling, we have a clinical mental health counseling master's program that's on campus and online. We also have a master's in psychology, which is online. Organizational leadership psychology is where our students work within organizations to create positive change and efficient environments, and we have master's and doctoral programs in that as well. And school psychology is where our ABA program sits and lives, and school psychology also offers a master's CAGS, the 3-year program. And we also have a graduate certificate in ABA, which you'll hear more about later. And we have an undergraduate program. It's a completion program in psychology and behavioral health for individuals who have the equivalent of associate's degree. And we also have many centers of excellence here where we're providing academic work, research, advocacy, direct services. So there's so much happening here at William James, and I'm just really pleased to be able to give you a snapshot overview. Okay, so if we can move on. Thanks, Mario. Next slide. Again, I'm not going to speak too long, just a minute or two more. But really want to emphasize our core values. That really is something that is very dear to us. It really sets us apart from many institutions of higher education and programs. We look to experiential education, and Dr. Lee will talk about that, as well as social responsibility. It's something where we hold this very dear to us as a culture, as a as an institution of learning, that we're really looking to meet the needs of underserved populations. And certainly ABA does that, and you'll hear more about that. Something that we also do within our culture here at William James College, and looking at trying at diversifying the workforce, as well as I said, looking at breaking down barriers to increase services, and equipped and train our mental health clinicians and behavioral health clinicians. Personal growth is something that you would want to hear about, I'm sure, as someone who's interested in a program. Our ratio to professors is one student to professor ratio is 1 in 12, so you are not just a number out there. You're very well known. We have practitioner faculty who are out doing or working, have worked in the field. So they're wonderful mentors with wonderful experience. So that being said, we'll move to our next slide, which is the question slide. And we already have a question or two in. Thank you, folks, for that. But just feel free to type your questions in the question box. And also, we do have a PowerPoint of the presentation, so I highly recommend downloading that, which is in the handout section. So you can go ahead and do that, and perhaps won't have to take so many notes, and can kind of just listen and absorb what you're hearing today. So thank you so much. And with that, I'd like to move to the next slide and present Dr. Lee.
Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you to the attendees for joining us this afternoon. Again, my name is Ron Lee. I'm the director of the ABA program at William James College, and I'm going to be very happy to talk about the 2 bullets that you see on the slide in front of you. I'll start by talking briefly about the field of applied behavior analysis, and a little bit about the applications of applied behavior analysis, meaning what do people do when they graduate, and what fields do they work in? And so I'll touch upon that. In that area, we'll talk a little bit about the professional credentials that are important for applied behavior analysts, so that they can do the work that they do. And then the meat and potatoes will be getting into the weeds of the graduate programs here at ABA, at William James College. We'll talk about some of the characteristics, some of the variations, the different iterations of the program. And so why don't we move on to the next slide and get right into it, and briefly talk about what is applied behavior analysis. Now, I have one slide on this, just because I know, to tell you the truth, many people come into a graduate program in ABA with some prior either experience in the field or exposure as an undergrad or in some other type of outlet. But there are some who come into the field without much of the background because there's something about it that interests them. It's either the content, or some of the professional paths that might be open to someone studying applied behavior analysis. So this slide, I'll admit, is a stolen slide. It is from one of my courses on the Intro to Applied Behavior Analysis in our graduate program, because it's useful to tell our graduate students what some of the background of ABA is. And what you're looking at is a sort of table of contents for a Introduction to Psychology textbook, so kind of a Psych 101 text. And what's highlighted there is chapter 4, pointing to learning and human nature. And basically that's the chapter that would be dedicated towards content related to applied behavior analysis. There is a broader sort of subject area, simply referred to as behavior analysis. And applied behavior analysis is one of the subcategories or subfields under that larger umbrella. In short, it is about how people, animals, organisms learn. And ultimately, why they behave the way they do, how do they learn the patterns of behavior under different contexts, things that other disciplines in psychology might refer to as you can see in chapter 10, personality, as well as obviously applications in terms of helping people in need. So people with developmental disabilities, people with mental health concerns, but many other applications beyond that as well. So why don't we move on to the next slide? And I'll touch a little bit about who behavior analysts work with. And so number one sort of predominant majority in terms of the population that behavior analysts devote their professional lives to is people with autism spectrum disorder and other developmental disabilities. I'd mentioned just a minute ago that many people come into the field of ABA through some other vein. And sometimes the most common path is autism. That is, maybe someone is working in a special education setting. Maybe they're actually pursuing some other discipline like speech or language pathology or special education. And as part of their initial studies, they encounter applied behavior analysis being used with the kids that they're getting exposed to. Maybe they have a relative, a young child with autism, or someone in the neighborhood has autism. And again, they get exposed to applied behavior analysis being used. And ultimately, the short story is they see how well that it works. The bottom line is ABA and autism are two terms that basically go hand in hand. And it's largely because for now, I'd say 3, maybe 4 decades, applied behavior analysis has been well known to be the most established and evidence-based approach for helping people with autism. And going back 3, 4, 5 decades, we're talking about autism spectrum disorder as a condition that largely was considered completely resistant to all other forms of intervention. And so, again, applied behavior analysis just being demonstrated to be so effective in improving the lives of people with autism and their families and the communities they live in. These two terms have gone hand in hand now for the past several decades. So very commonly, a path in applied behavior analysis will also be a path in working with people with autism spectrum disorder. Basically, what I want to say is behavior analysts are almost guaranteed a lifelong profession in working with people with special needs. If that's what one is interested in, it's certainly not hard to find those opportunities. Moving down the slide, you can see comorbid mental health concerns and psychiatric conditions. And so while ABA has been known to be the treatment of choice for autism, that's not been the case for other populations, despite the fact that ABA has a lot to add to the treatment plans and the intervention procedures for different populations. Again, remember, ABA is not about autism, it's about how people learn. And the more we understand about how people learn, the more we can actually improve their behavior under different circumstances and help them gain new social skills and socially appropriate skills and so on and so forth. And so while ABA has not been as popular with other populations, that's beginning to change. And again, it's largely due to the changes happening in the population of people with autism. And so again, autism 5, 6 decades ago is quite different from what autism looks like nowadays. And so essentially, it's not that uncommon to find now people diagnosed with autism who have maybe some other comorbid concern. And it could be anxiety or depression, specific behavioral concerns like eating disorder, sleeping issues, things like that. And so an applied behavior analyst, often being part of the treatment team for a person with autism, might now be part of that whole package, also addressing some other related behavioral and mental health concerns. This happens quite a bit, by the way, in schools already, and that's because a behavior analyst working in a school district will touch base with children with lots of kinds of learning needs and classifications, and in some case specified diagnoses. Third bullet down really kind of captures essentially what I'm talking about, and that is ABA is not about any specific population. It's about behavior. It's about how people learn. It's about why people do the things they do, what motivates them, and ultimately what can change their behavior in productive and meaningful directions. And so when you're trained in behavior analysis, you're trained to work with behavior. And as a result, you're really trained to work with almost anybody. It is true, while most of us do work with people with autism spectrum disorder, and so to a certain extent, Many of us are also sort of more proficient or experts with severe behavioral issues. By no means does that mean that's what you're limited to. And basically, we are beginning to kind of grow beyond autism quite a bit, especially over the past couple of decades, which is really nice. And then finally, again, on that same kind of point, non-clinical populations are relevant areas for behavioral applications. You can see in the parentheses, business settings, sports settings, education settings. These are some of the really nice extensions of behavior analysis, demonstrating to the public at large that behavior analysis is not autism treatment. It's behavior analysis, right? It's what can help people do things better. And so if you're interested in business applications and what can get employees to be happy and work harder and be more productive and things like that, a behavior analyst has some things to say. If you're interested in sports applications and motivation and teaching, subtle skills that athletes might need to know, or you're trying to just simply help improve health and fitness, at your local Y and get people to come in consistently and devote themselves and commit themselves to a healthier lifestyle, certainly, again, ABA has some things to add to that. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And on the related point, where do behavior analysts work? What are the settings? And again, I won't spend too much time on this because it's essentially just an extension of the previous slide. The populations that we work with will also determine the settings in which we work. And the first four that you see, classrooms, community-based agencies, in-home residential settings, and clinics, are all largely related to autism, developmental disabilities, and again, predominantly autism, especially for some of those bullet points. I'll elaborate in a second. And so very commonly, people with behavioral training do find themselves working in classrooms and schools, and now on a broader level, being hired by school districts to work across schools, essentially serving as the expert, if you will, the consultant, if you will, on all things behavioral. And sometimes that's taken tongue in cheek to be synonymous with all things autism, but again, that doesn't have to be the case. The second bullet is community-based agencies. This is where I started. So going back, 3 or 4 or decades, yeah, this is where behavior analysts found their work when ABA was not as widely known. School districts weren't out there looking for ABA professionals. It's in the community-based agencies that kind of, knew that ABA worked with people with autism and developmental disabilities. They're the ones who hired ABA professionals. And actually, a little bit of history, that's actually largely due to the parents. It's a lot of these community-based agencies were created by parent groups that simply said, schools aren't working for us. Clinics aren't working for us. The doctors are not giving us things that help our children, and they learn about applied behavior analysis and started finding ways to fund that treatment for themselves and their own kids. And that's basically how that kind of area grew. Again, that kind of link between autism intervention and ABA kind of started there. Because schools originally were not a primary outlet for ABA, a lot of the work then was done in the home, and that continues to this day. So sort of like after school hours, working in the homes, working in weekends, things like that, helping the kids kind of go through their routines at home, helping them with their ADLs, or what's called activities of daily living. So, household chores, cleaning up after themselves, dressing, eating, brushing their teeth in the evening, things like that. But also, obviously, other things like just self-care, recreational skills, play skills with a sibling, communication, the whole nine. So the last couple of bullets, clinics, hospitals, and other types of businesses are now sort of the newer development in ABA. Clinics and private practices still being an extension of autism intervention, because now going on, I guess, 10 plus years, the changes that has happened in the insurance field, where autism intervention can be achieved through individuals' health insurances. Now ABA professionals work very similarly to other medical professionals like a doctor or a dentist or a psychologist, where a person can access ABA intervention through their health insurance. And so ABA professionals have found themselves kind of moving in that direction, maybe opening up clinics and as you can see, private practices. It's not uncommon for a group of behavior analysts to kind of group together to be able to provide services to a community and people with autism in that community. Hospitals also a new extension, again, just because of the how the field of autism has changed. There still continues to be severe and intense behavioral needs. And sometimes inpatient hospital units or outpatient hospital units are still some of the places to find ABA, the help that parents need, and ABA professionals are the ones to provide it, and hospitals are recognizing that and now also seeking the ABA professionals. So certainly the minority would be other types of businesses, but again, these are areas where we're growing. Again, business applications, sports applications, other kind of community applications. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And I will touch on some of the professional credentials that you would seek for professions in applied behavior analysis. Now, the first and the one with the much longer tradition and history is this National Certification in Behavior Analysis. That's the credential is called the Board Certified Behavior Analyst credential, or BCBA. Again, national certification, which means it does not differ from state to state. If you achieve it now, you're board certified behavior analyst wherever you go, at least in the US. It is administered by what's called the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. By the way, if you do get into the field of ABA, get used to a lot of acronyms. So that's the BACB. And basically, they specify what candidates need to have before they're eligible to become a BCBA. And that third bullet down will illustrate what that is. That is required coursework in applied behavior analysis, experience in applied behavior analysis, and passing an exam in behavior analysis. We'll touch on some of those and how the graduate programs here at William James meet those requirements. So that's the national certification. Again, the one with the much longer history and tradition. Much newer development to the extent that it's not even across all 50 states. I'd say about now, I don't know the exact number, but about 2/3 of the states have some sort of licensure, I believe, for applied behavior analysis. Massachusetts is one. And as you can see, this is something like in any profession that does differ from state to state. Same for education, same for clinical psychology, and so on and so forth. So this is one area where you want to make sure you're familiar with the state requirements for licensure. And this is also something that if you were to come to William James College, when you sort of make your professional plans known or what options are you're interested in, an advisor, and certainly I as the program director will try to help students kind of navigate state requirements for licensure so that they're as prepared as possible by the time they graduate. Now, very importantly, you can see the very final bullet, and that is in many, many states, the BCBA, the certification, is the prerequisite for licensure. Give you an example, in Massachusetts, one of the very first questions, I can't guarantee is the very first question, but an early question in the application is, have you taken and passed the national certification exam? And if the answer is yes, you continue with the application. If the answer is no, you stop. And basically, you have to go past the certification exam. That's probably the most common path to licensure. Certainly the one that's relevant, I think, to most people looking at a graduate program as opposed to people who are clinical psychologists already working in the field for 30 years or so. So anyway, yeah, the BCBA is at least one of the prerequisites for licensure. In some cases, it's even the only requirement. Connecticut is an example of that. So if you have your BCBA in Connecticut, you can simply apply for licensure and you're done. In other states, there might be some other things you might need to do or other documentation that you need to provide about your training. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And I'll pause for a second and ask Beth if we have any questions. This could be a good time for anyone to toss in any quick questions if you do have.
Hi, Dr. Lee. Yeah, we do have a question, which is great. It's around, is ABA good for sport coaches? Is it close to sports psychology?
So that is a very good question. I talked about sports, or I touched on sports a few slides ago. What's really interesting is there is a growing interest in sports psychology and applied behavior analysis, or certainly there's a growing interest in the field of ABA in terms of getting into sports psychology. An example of that is there's this group in behavior analysis. It's called the dissemination of behavior analysis, which dissemination is about sharing information about ABA to populations and organizations that might not be as familiar with ABA. Over the past 2 to 3 months, I'd say, they've been hosting a number of free webinars on applications in sports psychology and ABA. I've been sitting in on a couple of them myself because I'm interested. And one of the first was more of a general webinar talking about the different things that ABA researchers and professionals have been doing in the field. I think there's one coming up even tomorrow with respect to MMA, the boxing, the fighting, and MMA training and behavior analysis, and how the science of ABA can be used for training purposes. Yeah, for sure. There's, despite the recent interest, there is a history of ABA applications. Actually, a colleague of mine, back when I was a doctoral student, actually did a study using applied behavior analysis to help basketball players improve their free throw shooting, which meant, kind of improving their form. I don't know what else because I'm probably could be a good participant in that study. In any case, the answer is for sure yes. I could probably go on at least talking about a couple of interventions that I'm familiar with in the field of ABA, but and sports psychology, yeah. But basketball, I've seen things in volleyball. I've seen gymnastic applications, football. So yeah, the whole nine. Short answer is yes. I gave you probably a little bit more than a short answer. Anything else, Beth?
So yes, let's see. How about helping with competitive anxiety, or I would think anxiety in general?
Yeah. So interesting. I I want to say, okay, so here's a couple of things. I'd say the answer is ABA could help, but I'll be honest, I don't know that I've seen that research. I know there's one sort of vague title of a research article that's kind of popping in my, by the way, I'm saying this now because I have a student this semester who's interested in sports applications, and I've been helping her look for some relevant research. And there's one that's popping in my head that dealt with things like, I don't know if it was stress or anxiety of, and how that might affect performance, and then behavior management or behavioral coping skills and things like that. So the short of it is, I'd say, when you learn about applied behavior analysis, you will learn about how ABA might help that. The truth is, some of these areas are so new. It's ripe for growth in that area. And the extension is, the things that we've done that have worked so well with, again, people with special needs, people with autism, who clearly can show symptoms that other people might refer to as anxiety or stress or things like that. We sure work on coping skills, without a doubt, to try to help someone perform to their best ability under various conditions. And so again, it's going to be applicable to different populations under different contexts. So the answer is not a hard yes, because the research probably isn't quite there yet, or to be honest, I'm not as familiar with it all. But certainly there's applicability there.
Great. So I think that's it for our questions right now. But please, everyone, continue to think about what you'd like to know more about, and feel free to put them in the question box. Thank you. We do have an audience poll, and what we'd like to know right now is, do you currently have a graduate degree, a master's or a MA? So if you could just say yes or no, and then it will help to help give us some information in terms of what Dr. Lee will be talking about momentarily. You just need to select one or the other. And okay, so we don't have anyone with a master's degree today, so that's helpful for us. And we'll move on now to the next program, the next slide. Thank you.
All right, that is helpful because it means I can devote a little bit more time talking to the core master's program. We do have another sub-program for which a master's degree is a prerequisite. So I'll let you know about that in case you're interested. You want to share information about that, but I will not have to go into as much detail about it. So here you can see we're going to start talking about the characteristics of the master's program. First thing to know is that we do have two delivery formats. The first is an on-campus master's program in Newton, on campus in Newton. But we also have a remote program or online program, which is open obviously to anyone. They are currently mutually exclusive programs, which means there's no crossover. So even if you're in Massachusetts and you say, well, I'm interested in the on-campus program, but can I take this one online? The answer right now is not yet. They are mutually exclusive, but we're certainly open to the possibility in the future. There's lots of factors that may come into play, but again, just know that for now you're applying to one or of the two different programs, and of course. We're here to help you try to determine what works for you best, pros and cons to either, and things like that. Regardless of the delivery format, the core programs are the same. That is, they're 34 credits in total, and can be completed within 4 to 6 semesters. And this becomes a range of either 5 to 12 credits that someone takes within each semester, depending, again, on their timeline. For those of you who are in Massachusetts, our graduate program and I can assist you with finding work opportunities in the field of ABA. Honestly, they're not that hard to find, but we can help you try to make sense of the different opportunities that you might be perusing through, and that's relevant to your field placement or sort of accrual of experience that's going to be required for certification and then obviously for licensure as well. We have partnered and been familiar with different organizations throughout Massachusetts for the past 5 years, and we've gotten to know quite a bit of them and have worked closely with some of them as well. And so we can certainly make some referrals to prospective students looking for just a place to start if you are, or if you're already in the field and you're looking for something different. Again, we can help you with that type of stuff. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And here are some more details. Specifically first for the on-campus program, we are talking about your traditional 15-week semester. Now, the fastest that the program can be completed is in 4 consecutive semesters. That would be, for example, fall, spring, summer, fall, if we're talking about the upcoming spring, spring, summer, fall, spring. And that would come out to about 9 to 12 credits per semester. This gives you an idea of sort of the workload that's required. And we do offer part-time options, which can extend the timeline by 1 or 2 additional semesters, 5 to 6 semesters total. And you can see basically what happens is the course load drops by a course or 2, 2 to 3 courses per semester. I like to throw this in because I think this is potentially a useful option for students who are working full-time, as many actually are in our program. And they're also busy trying to accrue the hours for the BACB, and they have family obligations and so on and so forth. And so it seems that 4 semesters is a short time, and that's a nice timeline for a program. 5 and 6 is not that much longer, and if it helps people sort of take care of all their obligations and needs and schoolwork and work and family work and so on and so forth, and they can do it with just a bit less stress, I certainly advise it for sure. That being said, a picture of the 4 semester program is classes typically about 3 evenings per week. We start, generally speaking, after 4, maybe about 4:30. We go until about 7:30 or 8. The longer night, there's usually one longer night. We go up until about 9 o'clock. Um, and then finally, you see group supervision for the BCBA. This I won't go into great detail now. This is in regards to the requirements for certification in behavior analysis. They're basically different formats of supervision that you can receive. The point here is our on-campus program, you will be taking coursework or seminar classes that can count for some of the supervision that you receive. There's absolutely no con to this. It's completely a perk. In fact, some students don't need it at all. They will take the course anyway, but they don't need to call it supervision, whereas others, they simply will take the supervision because why not? It helps. And then finally, of course, the thing to assess with respect to on-campus or online is the on-campus program. Some students really prefer, and that this is what they want, this is what they're looking for. Maybe one, they like the face-to-face in-person benefit of being on campus, maybe being away from, let's say, their home or a place where there's lots of other competing things going on. And so it's nice to be on campus for sure. And other people like the accountability of going to campus to see a professor face to face, as well as their colleagues and peers. So if that works for you, that's what the on-campus program is for. Let's move on to the next slide. And on the flip side, we'll talk about the online program. First bullet, it's 100% online. There's no requirement to be in person. Some programs, either in ABA or other disciplines, you may hear have something like a residency requirement. There is none for this program at the time. So again, 100% online and distance friendly, I suppose, is the way to think about it. Still 34 credits, but I should note that the online program, again, as of right now, there's only one timeline to complete this, and that is the 6 semester timeline. So we're talking about 2 classes a semester. So really, what this program is sort of geared towards is the person who does have those other obligations, and they're seeking an online program because, one, the format is useful for them. Two, obviously the idea of flexibility is useful in that there's a degree of work and content for the coursework that is meant to be done on your own time. And that refers to asynchronous activities. You can see that last bullet down there. So in online programs, there is a portion of stuff that you do on your own, and then there's a portion of stuff where you do with everyone else, your professor and your classmates. And so for our online program, it's about a 50-50 split each week. So same thing, 15-week semesters, but in each week, half of your course obligation is done on your own time. The other half is time spent in a virtual classroom, so a Zoom meeting or something like that. This will come out to about, by the way, you'll see 1 to 1.5 hours per week of both asynchronous and synchronous activities. Even the asynchronous stuff is sort of time allotted or estimated, so everyone has an idea of how much time you devote to being in class. And you'd see me doing air quotes if you see me. So that's asynchronous classwork. All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about experience in the field of ABA. Remember, we can help with employment and getting hours accrued in the field of ABA, but you should know, as you can see from the first bullet, that we don't actually require field placement. Now, there's a reason for this. The key thing is the BACB, that governing body for certification, has removed any university-based advantage to basically working through a university to accrue your hours. This is something that students have done in the past, in case you know people in the field or you've heard about something like this. Basically, there's no longer an advantage to doing it through a university. There used to be. Now, everyone, regardless of how you do it, and many people do it outside of a university program, meaning as part of their normal work, everyone needs to accrue between 1,500 and 2,000 hours. And at a regular rate, this is going to take students and trainees in the field of ABA up to about 2 years. So this will go beyond the time of the graduate program. But most importantly, we don't require this because, as you can see the third bullet down, most importantly, you can get this for free. You don't have to pay a university credits to help you essentially work in the field of ABA. So we sort of removed this requirement. Again, when it made sense for students to do it through a graduate program, then we incorporated it. But because there's no longer that advantage of doing fewer hours through a university, we've eliminated the requirement. So basically, you work in an ABA organization. You say, "Hey, I'm going to graduate school for ABA. Can I get supervision? Can my work count towards this requirement for certification?" Honestly, 100% of the students that have come through our graduate program could have done this, but obviously they wanted the university advantage. Now that there is no advantage, they basically just could have gotten it for free, or in current regulations, they would have just gotten it for free. And again, I'll just remind you if that we help students still continue to kind of find good training settings. The organizations we've used to work with in the past, we continue to maintain good relationships with. And so would be happy to kind of refer students there, and places where we trust the type of training that students receive and can offer a breadth of experiences. All right, let's move on to the next slide. I should mention that our on-campus program can offer field placement and supervision. This is basically akin to what we have offered in the past when there was this university advantage. Again, I know I'm talking slightly in vague terms, but I can certainly elaborate more to anyone who has questions about it. So we thought it was important to maintain it as an optional component to our program in case someone felt that it was important to be able to get supervision through William James College, basically through a faculty member, which is what we used to do in the past. Obviously, there's some pros to that. You are getting supervision and mentorship from an expert in the field of ABA, but it is an extra 5 credits. It is something you would have to pay extra for. We would collaborate with your employer to ensure that you're getting the right kinds of experiences. So there's a little bit more hands-on approach there and collaboration between the graduate program and your employer. But again, honestly, we don't necessarily push this that much because, like I say, most students don't actually need this. They're getting fine training where they are. Or again, we can refer you to places where you would get fine training without having to pay the 5 credits. Now, that being said, it's offered over the 4-semester program only. Actually, it's offered over 4 semesters, even if you take the 6-semester program. And within the program, within these 5 credits, you would accrue about 1,000 hours. There's a degree of variability depending on where you work, but about 1,000 hours of the 1,500 or 2,000 hours that you would need. So close to half or a little bit more than half. All right, let's move on to the next slide. And here's where I'll talk just a bit about letting you know what is different about the ABA program. If you're doing your homework, if you're doing some of your research, you probably have a handful of options. I know you do. Same thing like working in the field of ABA. And how do you make heads or tails of different organizations or different university programs? The one thing I'll share with you is requirements for certification, all of the graduate programs have to meet those. Requirements for licensure, all of the graduate programs have to meet those. So there's going to be a lot of similarity between programs. The thing I'll point out to you that is different about William James College is the mission of William James College, the reason William James College exists. And that is, it was always designed to be very practitioner oriented. There are, of course, similar schools throughout the nation, but generally speaking, they're far and fewer between with respect to programs that are more in the traditional academic sort of perspective and mission of training researchers as opposed to training practitioners or researchers who kind of touch on practice. Here at William James, same thing across all of the programs. It basically it came from and stemmed from training practitioners. And so you can see 3 bullet points that that I like to highlight in that recently over the last year, we've been able to revise our graduate program and our curriculum. And one of the things we really tried to do is move away from this kind of standard ABA coursework. I'm not going to lie, we still have some of that. We have to meet the requirements for certification. But then for any extra room that we had, how do we really address the needs of people who are going to be working in the field? And so, what are the things you wish you learned in graduate school? I asked myself that, I asked colleagues that, and most importantly, I asked graduates of our program that, who experienced the first iteration of the program. And basically the makeup now is these 8 courses on principles and techniques of ABA. You basically get that training almost anywhere you go, but I highlight the 5 courses that really emphasize professional activities of behavior analysts. I would love to go into more detail about them, but I guess at this point, what I'd like to share is that there was this real effortful kind of approach towards, what type of content is really going to help our graduate students succeed the second they graduate and become credentialed. And then finally, that practicum or field placement, where in some programs it is required, but I stress that every student that's come through our program could have gotten it anyway. And so changing it to an optional component let us include some of these other professional activities training in our courses. And so I actually think the optional component to the practicum is a nice component. All right, moving on to the last slide for me. Again, I did not have to go into great detail about this, but I will let those of you who are here know that we do have a certificate in an ABA program, but the prerequisite for this is a graduate degree in another field. It could be any other field. And then if you're in this other field, you have this other master's degree, but you're interested in getting the certification in behavior analysis, then you're taking a 21 credit program that can be completed over 4 consecutive semesters, basically 21 credits carved out of the full master's program, which is about 2 classes a semester. It is offered online and on campus, but you still need to have the mentored experience for the BCBA, still the 1,500 to 2,000 hours. So you would still need to be working in the field of ABA. But I will point out, importantly, for those of you in Massachusetts, particularly, and certainly in some other states, and I can help you determine that if you are from another state, the BCBA alone might not lead to licensure. In Massachusetts, it does not. It is the first requirement for licensure. But remember, I said in Connecticut, for example, certification is completely sufficient. So, so this is something that you would want to research, or again, by all means, just send me an email and I can help you figure that out as well, or send you some resources so you can determine this for yourself. All right, I think that does it for me. Let's move on to the next slide. And I'll hand it to you, Beth.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Lee. So this question did come in a little bit before you talked about practicums and that kind of thing and hours, but Linda was wondering, are there any practicums or internships required for the program? So I think you answered it, but I just thought I'd ask it again.
Yeah, short answer, the answer is no, not required. Certainly helpful if you're working in the field as you go through the graduate program. We can link a lot of the stuff that we talk about in class to work that's being done in, on your own. And like I say, any student who wanted to kind of get started in the field, we can help you do that.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much. I think that's it for our questions. But we have time, so continue to bring, send them in, folks, if you have any other questions. But thank you. And now I think we can move on to the next slide. And I believe that is it's an audience poll. And if you could just let us know if you plan to start graduate school. Do you know when you plan to start graduate school? And if you don't, that's okay too. So 2001 in the spring, or 2021 in the spring, 2021 in the fall, or you're undecided. Okay. Well, it's like 50-50 split. That's great. Okay. Thank you so much, folks, because now I'd like to introduce you to Maria Murga, who's going to be talking about applying to William James College.
Thank you so much, Beth. This is Mario Murga, Director of Admissions. I'm also an International Student Advisor here at William James. If there happens to be some students from other nations, I'll be happy to speak with you one-on-one. But I'm here to tell you what it is like to apply to be a member of this community, of this family, as we call ourselves. So if you haven't already started an application, um, we have an online option for that, and it is very user-friendly. Um, it is easy to navigate through it, and you see right there in blue and under the first bullet, a link to it. Good news, we like to distribute that. The GREs are not required. Interviews are required. Not everybody gets invited to an interview, but um, there it is. So this online application is very good in that it allows you to upload almost every item that you would need to present to us, including the essays, and I'll go over the recommendations in a minute. There are two elements that would come separately, and that will be your official transcripts. And I'd like to mention that if your college or university offers the option to order an e-transcript, I fully encourage you to do so. And we still need to receive that transcript even if you're still in college, okay? With the caveat that we will receive, before you enroll, the final transcript with a degree conferral. The other item out of the two that arrive separately, and this is of importance to our international students, that will be the TOEFL. You will need to take the TOEFL, and we can talk more about it as well, and that will come separately as well. Now on to recommendations. You will need 3 recommendations, which is very common in graduate studies, and it is part of our application in that you would enter the data necessary to identify each of your 3 recommenders, right? And you don't not need to have submitted the whole application for them to start working on their part. And I love this about our application because I hate to see some applications detained because the recommender did not have enough time to do his or her part. Okay, so when you enter that data for each of your recommenders, the system will send them an email with a login and instructions how to initiate their recommendation on your behalf. They will be presented with several questions that they need to answer, and optionally, and also I encourage you, if you have influence over each one of your recommenders, to tell them in advance, as you ask them to be a recommender for you, to please, if they can, to upload a personal letter. Again, this is optional, and they have the ability to do that. More and more recommenders we see doing that. They see how beneficial is for the applicant nowadays. And so I encourage you to do that. So 50-50% applying for spring 2021 and fall 2021. Those of you who are applying for spring 2021, which begins in January 2021, the deadline is December 3rd. Okay. Now for fall, there are 2 deadlines. There's something that we call early consideration, and the deadline for that one is December 9th, 2020. And the general consideration fall deadline is January 6, 2021. After those deadlines have passed, there is rolling admissions on space available basis. So you can always reach out to us in admissions, and you see our email in that blue box, and where we're here to answer all your questions per email or per voice, and you can make use of that. So 2 tips for you that I'd like to give you at this point is, if you have not already discovered, we have something called the application guidelines brochure in our website. So if you go to the admissions piece of the website, you click on the drop-down menu and you choose Apply Behavior Analysis. In the left-hand side menu, you will see Guidelines Brochure, Application Guidelines Brochure. We find through the years that that is very helpful to our applicants, and they request it many times, especially when we're speaking one-on-one, because that contains in 4 pages all the necessary requirements for you to apply, and even has some Q&As in the last page that historically students or applicants have been asking us. So it's very helpful, I feel. You can print it, download it, save it, and as you're working on your application, that will keep you on track if you need a little bit of that tip number 2. William James College very much protects your identity, protects that the communications between us and you are private and for your eyes only. So I do encourage you, which you will need anyways, your passport and login to visit your application as many times as you wish as you're preparing your application, and you have to submit it. But even after you submit it, you need to check on the arrival of the documents, because that's how you can find out whether recommender A, B, or C has submitted his or her recommendation, whether he or she is working on it or not started at all. So that's a wonderful piece of our system that allows you to then go to them and say, please submit it, or reach out to us and we can help you with that. Also, likely that you want to check the arrival of your transcripts, and you can do that by accessing that website with your login and password. And also, the last piece, even after you submit it and you ascertain your application is complete, further decisions in relation to William James College will be given in writing to you, and you will need it to open it up. We don't send it to regular open emails where other people can be viewing it. Okay, the last tip that I like to give is the one of our student ambassadors. If you go again to that drop-down menu of admissions at the William James College site, you will see students and alumni ambassadors. I encourage you to make use of this. You will see a variety of students who are willing to speak with people like yourselves, thinking about the field, thinking about what it is like to be a student at this university, at this college. And you will see their profiles, you will see their photos and their contact information. And you are welcome to make that your own and to reach as many as you wish. Okay, let us quickly, because we only have just a couple of minutes, move to the next slide, and that has to do with financial aid. So William James College does participate in the Federal Work-Study Employment Program that you may be familiar with from your undergraduate. Also, William James College is part of the unsubsidized federal Stafford loans and the federal Grad Plus loans that you may have heard of. For these 3 elements, you must have applied to your FAFSA, which you may be familiar with. That's a free application for federal student aid, and you need to enter our code. Our code is G21636. G as in graduate, 21636. That is on our website as well, okay? And you know how to get there is under studentloans.gov. William James College also has merit scholarships, okay? And you do not need to apply for that, and you will be communicated whether you receive one of those with your letter of admissions, okay? So do reach out to us should you have any financing question that you may have. And you see at the bottom of that slide in front of you, Hillary Baxter at williamjames.edu. She's the Director of Financial Aid here at William James, and she'll be more than happy to communicate with you. So quickly, one of the favorite parts of our webinars are the questions. So I'll give it back to Beth for any Q&As that may
Thank
happen.
you. Yeah, so Maria, this is very particular to Anna, and she says, I have a transcript of subjects from Ukraine. It's an official transfer and evaluated as a bachelor's of arts in languages. I have it sealed in paper. Would that work? Can I bring it in person to William James?
Okay, Anna, when you go to admissions piece, please, you will see a number of links there, and please click on international applicants, and you will see that we need an official, even if it's in English, we need an evaluation to the equivalency, and there is a specific company that we suggest you use. So please look through the process there. And we need to receive that certification that is equivalent to US education in the bachelor's level. And they also do translations if necessary. I guess more and more international universities, as I studied in foreign universities myself, do their transcripts in English these days, but you need the equivalency officially from those companies. We're happy to give you further guidance if you need it, but yes, we do receive frequently this kind of evaluations from foreign credentials.
Okay, great. So that is the end of our questions at this point, and looks like we've kind of come in right and on time, which is great. And at this point, I think I would just want to highlight, please contact us if you have questions around the program itself. Dr. Lee would be happy to answer them. The admission office, as you look to get information around the application and all those other kinds of questions that you may have, you can always run it through the admission office. And Hillary Baxter is our Director of Financial Aid, so feel free to reach out there as well. This slide shows you all of the different ways that we engage with so many different folks and constituencies. So Facebook, as you can see, all these different social media platforms. Please join us. Follow us, see what's happening, and you'll see that there is a lot happening, and it's a great, vibrant community that you could potentially become part of, and we'd love if you could and do. So thank you so much for joining us. Mario, do you have something you'd like to finish with?
Very much so. We will be having a virtual open house that we will be implementing. Most likely will be in November. I hope to see you at one of those open houses. But keep, as Beth mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, about the news about William James College. So do visit the website. In the far right-hand side, you will see a link with news. As again, echoing what Beth mentioned, there's lots going on, and everything related to mental health is a responsibility we take very seriously.
Thank you, Mario. Dr. Lee, I don't know if you're still on. Yes, do you have anything else you'd like to finish with?
Nothing else, just thank you to everyone who showed up, and feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about the program or ABA in general. Happy to correspond and just interact with you guys.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll sign off now, but feel free to reach out. Often questions come up as you think more about the program and all the presentation and all the information that you heard today. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Goodbye, everyone.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.